I mean, we can just basically tell them to go
It's not
find
just change that org/UH Divest
banking on
University.
it's UH banking on bondage. So they
Okay.
can Google that, UH banking on bondage
Okay.
on change.org.
Okay.
U of H banking on bondage.
I must snap this. Yes, and round 3, y'all, at Houston Media Source to talk about Divest University of Houston. Yay! I'm excited.
I'm glad you guys could make it. All of you.
Me too. Yet another tool.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, great. Okay.
Exploit the media
3
where
minutes.
you can.
3 minutes.
15, 20, 30 seconds, 40 break. Don't hit the microphone. Don't look. Clip ready. Phone. No phone.
Phone or no phone?
Yeah,
no
make sure you
phone?
turn.
Right, you see that. Okay, Michael,
Yeah,
here's the drill.
Okay.
We open the show with this shot in music. When
Right.
you see this,
Tyler
you are
just shared it.
cued. At that point, I follow you guys for 58 minutes.
Oh my God.
Got it?
58
Got it.
minutes. That's so long.
Is Amanda ready?
I'll go that
Yeah.
way.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay, we don't see Amanda.
So the idea is that we're
I
just
will
going to have
bring
a
her in.
conversation.
Okay, I'm going to go to you, and then you're going to rip through all the intros. And when you introduce Amanda, she will be in the 2 boxes with you.
Okay.
Try not to move around too much, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
We're a 4 TV station. We don't have camera operators. So,
All right, don't hit the mic. Here's the mic.
No hitting of the mic.
Okay.
What kind of campaign manager are you again?
Senior campaign organizer.
Senior campaign organizer. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want a flyer?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can you slide one of those down here?
Flyers for everyone.
Yay. That's exciting.
Minute. This is really just take a deep breath and relax. This is like
okay,
you
I'm
for
taking the
inviting
sound
us,
down for
Michael.
the intro, so everybody just be aware that, especially lady on Skype. So you're gonna lose the sound for a minute. But
Okay.
just hang with us. They're gonna bring you in very quickly. Okay.
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 Good evening. I'm Michael Allen. I'm here with Public Affairs, Public Access Television. I'm going to be a host tonight as we talk. I'm also with Divest University of Houston, and we're going to have a conversation tonight about an issue which many in the public know nothing about and which fuels mass incarceration in our country. I'm here tonight with my guest, Nakia Winfield, to my left. She is a graduate student at University of Houston in the School of Social Work. Also, we're here with Julia Cramp, who's also a graduate student with Nakia at the University of Houston School of Social Work. And next to her is Karen Desenia Martinez. She's a recent UH graduate and is an activist who works at SEIU. And on Skype from Oregon with Enlace International, we have Amanda Aguiar Shank, and she's a senior campaign organizer for Enlace International. We've been working with Enlace International with the national director, Danielle Castillo, correct me with that name again, Amanda.
Daniel Carrillo.
Carrillo, yeah. I don't say it as well as she does, but we've been working with Daniel, and Daniel, as he does a lot, is traveling, and so we were fortunate enough to get Amanda to appear on the show with us tonight. Now, basically, what we've been doing is bringing this problem to the attention of the city of Houston. We began looking at this as a result of posts that we had been seeing on Facebook by Enlace and in the news that Columbia University and University of California last year forced divestiture from prison investments in their universities. So we began looking at the University of Houston, and we found out they also have investments. And as a result, Julia and Nakia and I started working together on this almost a couple months ago. We've been working with Daniel pretty closely on it, getting guidance from him. And about a month ago, we started working with Karen. Karen has a lot of contacts in the immigrant reform community. She's got a lot of contacts at the university, and we've been working to put this together. Recently, 2 days ago, we had a conference at the university, and we brought our issue to the students there and got some positive feedback. And we have plans moving up till May 19th when the Board of Regents meets, when we plan to bring our stack of petitions and to bring our demands to what we would like them to do. Would anybody like to add anything to that?
In addition, when the Board of Regents next meets, which is May 19th, we're hoping to have some people testify so that the Board of Regents can hear from the student population as well as the population at large in order to get a better idea of what people think about their investitures in the for-profit prison system, hopefully getting them to take a second look at that and divest.
Great. What kind of money are we talking about?
Well, we have discovered that U of H has $2.2 million of its endowment fund invested in 4 large banks, which in turn are part of the Million Shares Club. They hold majority stock in CCA and GEO, which are the 2 largest for-profit prisons in the United States.
And that Million Shares Club, that's something that you, Amanda, that your people at Enlace came up with. What is that? Can you tell us what that Million Shares Club is?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Maybe now is also a good time to do a quick overview of how the campaign started. Would that help?
Yeah.
So the prison divestment campaign nationally is coordinated by Enlace and a steering committee of about 20 organizations representing immigrant and Black communities primarily. It was founded in response to some of the crippling anti-immigrant legislation that was sweeping the country around 5 years ago. A lot of that on the border, so I'm sure you all in Texas are pretty familiar with it. We started investigating what was behind some of that legislation. Specifically, we went to look at SB 1070 in Arizona, which was known as the Show Me Your Papers law. It basically gave regular street cops the responsibility to ask people on the street whether they had legal documentation and to turn them into ICE if they didn't have papers to be in the country. So what we found was that the private prison lobby was heavily behind SB 1070 and other anti-immigrant legislation across the country. And this is where we get back to the Million Shares Club, because the research that we did found that private prisons are powerful. They're a powerful for-profit lobbying entity, but that they absolutely do not act alone. And there are 3 pillars that hold up this industry and the push for mass incarceration and immigrant detention. One of those pillars is the prisons themselves. One of them is the politicians that they lobby, that continue to promote tough on crime, anti-immigrant legislation against people of color in this country. And the third one is the investors. And this is really key. Investors provide massive lobbying power that private prisons don't have. to get mass incarceration policies on the books. They provide lending, billions of dollars of lending for prisons. And prisons need that money to be able to build their facilities and operate. And those major investors it's kind of hard to overstate the amount of power that they have in the country right now. Those are people like Wells Fargo, like Ameriprise, who I know the University of Houston is invested in, and Bank of New York Mellon, so other powerful interests that you may know of. And what we learned is that without the support of those investors that have over 1 million shares invested in prisons, private prisons would be stopped in their tracks. They couldn't build. They couldn't lobby. And so the target of the National Prison Divestment Campaign really is those Million Shares Club members, and to get them to pull their support from private prisons, which makes the University of Houston Divestment Campaign so incredibly important.
Thank you, Amanda. You mentioned the impact of GEO and CCA on the immigrant community. I believe they predominantly run the detention centers for ICE. Do you know anything about that, Karen, about what ICE is doing with these private prisons?
Yes, actually. So ICE and is it GEO? I forget
GEO,
the name.
yeah.
But they run like a lot of private prisons, and so a lot of that money too actually is from our tax money, from like these people lobbying politicians. And so I first learned about this back in like 2012. I was actually writing a script, and I'm also undocumented. So right now I'm under DACA, which means that technically, like the money that I invest in my education, like my tuition, the money that I like used to work for at a coffee shop, and then go to school full time, it could go into deporting my own parents or people like me. In Houston, actually, right now there's about 600 people per day being detained. It used to be that Arizona was the #1 detention hub in the U.S., but now it's Houston. So United We Dream is actually running a campaign to get money out of that too.
Yeah, you're right. This the University of Houston is a public university. Actually, I've looked at the numbers, and the public is supporting the University of Houston to the tune of $300 million this year alone. So they're taking tax dollars, your tax dollars, and they're applying them to the bills that Houston have. Now, the endowment fund, the way this works, the endowment fund invests $716 million. They have a pile of money they invest, and they take the dividends, and they also run the university. But everything goes into a common pool. But their part of the pool is dirty. They're investing, the University of Houston, their rhetoric on their website, if you look at it, they're very proud of what they do for the community. Well, in this case, they're not doing a whole lot for one part of the community, and that's the poor part, or the Hispanic part, or the black part. So the three of us, the four of us, we've decided to try to get them out of the prison business. It's actually shocking that nobody knows about this. But Enlace is involved on this divestiture program on several levels. One of them is universities, but they also have other levels on private pensions. And I believe you guys are involved in getting cities to divest from their holdings as well. This is a big, big, big problem in our country that nobody really understands. That I'm paying in to my 401k. They're taking that money and they're giving it to the prisons, these private prison companies, and they're locking people up on my money. It's our money that's going into this stuff. Is there any?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
That's right. And I think, like Karen is talking about, it's pretty shocking to realize that as taxpayers, but also as participants in universities, paying our student fees, as participants in cities, paying our taxes, as participants in unions, if we're lucky enough to have a union pension, that our money is going to lock up our own people. And this is a campaign that's led by people like myself and our team at Enlace, along with the steering committee, that has personal family experience of having our loved ones locked up or being locked up ourselves. And it's just completely unconscionable that we're participating in that system. I think that's why the campaign has been growing so fast. And you're right. I think there are a lot of different places where we can be divesting our money. I'm happy to talk more about that. I think that what we've seen in the last year is that the activism and really the radical outspokenness and courage of students is what's pushing this movement forward, and where some of the biggest victories have been. There were victories last year, starting in the summer at Columbia University, led by Black students there, where the $9 billion endowment of Columbia University was divested from prisons fully. And then, like you said, at the University of California, which has close to $100 billion. So this is the largest university pool of money in the country. Black students there at the African Black Coalition also led that divestment effort. Importantly, the campaign nationally is calling for divestment from prisons and also reinvestment in communities impacted by incarceration and left behind by the country economically. And so at the California State University, Los Angeles, Black students there successfully divested just in January, a couple of months ago. And to pair with that, they won reinvestment in Black students. They won a Black Scholars Hall. They won permanent investment in recruitment and support for Black students. They won a required course on race and ethnicity. And so the work that you all are part of at the University of Houston has far-reaching implications in terms of as people involved in these public spheres, how do we use our power and our decision-making to determine the priorities for where our budget is going and where our investments are going?
I agree. Nakia, you and Julia have been reaching out to students at UH. How is that going?
It's going well. We've got a lot of positive feedback. We've got people who want to be involved, which is excellent. But really, I feel that our biggest thing right now is education. There's a lot of people who don't understand how bad private prisons are. And they are of the idea that our system is just on some level, and that people are in prison for a reason, and it's a good reason, and these people should be kept out of society. But when we tell people that the for-profit prison industry has been really pushing minimum sentencing, 3 strikes laws, maintaining current drug laws or enforcing them even more. These are things where they're creating prisoners. It's not just that they're a private industry that's working with current number of prisoners. They're doing things that will create more people They're creating felons, really. They're making it so the prison population is much larger than it would be otherwise, and incarcerating people who absolutely shouldn't be there. And so to that end, even if you don't care about immigration, or if you're not worried about, the plight of poor people or people of color, if you're worried about just on a very libertarian, I'm just worried about my tax dollars, we're incarcerating people, we're paying between $31,000 and $94,000 per year, incarcerating people who should be out on the streets, who should be working, who should be paying back into the system. And when you take people off of the streets and you're incarcerating them, that means their kids need to go into CPS. That's other financial motivation for people to not want this to be happening. They're losing their houses, and they're not able to reintegrate into their communities when they come back. So I feel like just the education has been really, really helpful. Also letting people know that for-profit prisons just do almost all they can to exploit people. Like they've got contracts where they have a certain number of beds that you have to have filled. So if they drop down down lower than 80% filled, the state or the government is still paying for those empty beds. And so they literally have quotas of prisoners to fill, and so people have to be in there, which is why I think they're detaining so many immigrants, why ICE is involved, because it's people to fill up those beds, and it happens to fall on poor people and people of color because we're the most vulnerable members of society, and in general people care less when we're locked up, unfortunately. So I feel like the education piece has been really, really good for people.
Thank you. Now, I was listening to you, and it hit me. The term I kept thinking is that they've started commodifying humans. They've made us commodities. And if you look at the numbers of those incarcerated in our country, the majority of them are drug cases, nonviolent crimes, and people suffering from mental illness. And yet we keep putting them in and putting them in. And my question was always, well, if someone has a drug problem and they get caught with, say, a pound of marijuana, and you throw them in jail, they can't afford bond, so they stay in jail, they lose their job, they probably lose their car, their family has to move somewhere else, their wife or husband has to get a second job, the kids suffer emotionally and financially, and this guy gets thrown in a box with a pit bull, somebody that's violent, that may need to be there. So who does this serve? Who does this serve? And then I realized it serves the guy who owns the box. In other words, the private prison companies, or the people that supply the health care, or the people that supply the food service, or the people that supply the telephones. But it does not serve the people. Julia, do you see a shift in our country away from serving basic human needs in our criminal justice system? I mean, can you speak to that?
I mean, yes, there have been some good things that have been happening in criminal justice, but for the most part, people who go to prison do not come out rehabilitated and ready to rejoin society. The whole issue of private prisons, while there is an argument that they're more cost-effective than government-run prisons, is not actually a good one. That's something that we come across actually quite often when we're talking to students and to the community. They want to know, well, isn't it better if we can privatize this and they'll be more cost effective, they won't have to deal with the bureaucracy and all the red tape. And then we tell them that these private prisons are actually being subsidized by the government, and the government is actually helping them make profits. So if a prisoner is becoming too expensive, or their health care costs are going past a certain level, the private prison will send them back to a federally or state-run facility because they're too expensive and they're affecting their bottom line. So there's a whole range of issues with private prisons and the way prisoners are treated. Another issue with private prisons is that they're not subject to the freedom of information requests because they're private entities. Whereas public prisons or state-run prisons, they have to turn over information about what happens in their facilities when requested. So that's another thing that's been a major problem with private prisons. Yeah. It's hard to find out what happens in there.
Thank you, Julia. I agree. Now, Karen, I know they talked about Bill 1070 in Arizona, but here in Houston, I know I've been involved with several actions of people fighting the 287G law here in Texas. And is it your opinion that private prisons and the fact that they lobby so much to keep so many 34,000 beds in these private detention centers filled, that we have 287G and there's money that they're throwing at it to make sure that that doesn't change?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned something really important earlier, and it's the intersectionality of issues, how one thing like affects the other, right? Like private prisons and immigrants, and like the way we view poor people, right? So 287G, right now in Houston is being ran. It's actually been part of the city of Houston for about a little bit more than 8 years now. So when Obama first came into office, he promised to do an amnesty, to do an immigration reform, and that's the reason why he got elected. And he could have actually passed it his first year, but he didn't. So and now Obama is known as the deporter in chief to our community. 1 out of 5 people in Houston is undocumented, so we're an easy target. I think about 40 to 50% in Houston is Latino or Hispanic. I mean, this money could easily go and be invested into education, but because I mean, the money is gonna go. It has to go somewhere, right? The money is there and it has to go somewhere. And in this case, it's just it's not going to the right places because the demographics in the U.S. are changing, and it's something we have to accept. We have to acknowledge. It's also a racial issue. And let me just say right now, I'm wearing my 5 for 15 shirt. I work for SEIU Texas, and we were doing like a lot of actions today because tax day is coming up. So we're also trying to hold big corporations accountable for avoiding paying their taxes and holding people in poverty. And a lot of these people who work these jobs are immigrants, are women. So I mean, all of this is related, and that's why our communities are sticking together. And I'm glad we're doing things like this today.
Great, thank you. I don't know if any of the viewers noticed, but I'm the only man here. But it's something that I've noticed from working with activists for the last few years. Women are the most fierce and dedicated activists that I see. They're the first ones that'll stand up and take a stand and speak their mind. I'm not running men down, but I admire the women activists that I know, including all 3 of these ladies. Amanda.
If you don't mind, I could speak just a moment to that point that you were bringing up.
Sure.
Unless you've got something else pressing.
No.
Because I think there's a very relevant tie-in with all of this that Karen's bringing up. Texas is home to one of the most shameful instances of the private prison industry, which is the family detention facility at Dilley, which is a facility that is designed for women and children who are escaping economic violence, domestic violence, political persecution south of the U.S.-Mexico border. And so folks are coming up from Central America, from Mexico, and are being locked up with children as young as a few months old. And there's a lot known now about Dilley. It houses over 2,000 women and children. The children there lose weight, they get sick. They're not used to the food. The conditions of isolation and surveillance are very intense for young children. There have been suicide attempts by mothers. There have been hunger strikes. There was a letter sent last summer by 178 members of the House of Representatives asking ICE to shut this down, to shut down family detention, because it's one of the just most naked examples of the exploitation of women of color.
Yes.
And women who 5-10 years ago would have been treated as political refugees, as people who have valid asylum cases and credible fear, which they do. And now they're treated as people who should be, locked up behind bars, surveilled and controlled. And so I wanted to bring this in at that point. I think it gives even more significance to work on the border and in Texas. There's over a dozen CCA facilities. Corrections Corporation of America owns and administrates the Dilley facility on behalf of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And that's not the only one, but I think it really shows us the extent that these corporations are willing to go to, and that the political establishment is willing to go to, at the expense of women of color for profit.
And let me ask you real quick, have you been to Dili by any chance?
Have I been to Dili? No, our staff has been to Dili. I have not personally.
Well, I went a couple of months ago, and like really it's so reminiscent of like concentration camps, like Nazi Germany. Like you go on